Welcome back to our fifth day of virtual learning. We're on the fourth topic in Unit 5, the human sciences, and today we're going to look at the difference within the human sciences between quantitative and qualitative approaches. Start with old business. I'm still lacking 10 natural science assessments. Okay, it's been 2 weeks. I'm not going to harass you anymore. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. If you don't have it turned in, I'm going to give you a 1 out of 7 in the grade book. And when you turn it in, I'll put in whatever your real grade is, because I'm hoping like maybe your parents will see your grade, something that will spur you to action. I will be putting in the rest of the grades tomorrow, and then it says Thursday. That's today, so probably Friday, and I will hit return so you get electronic copies back with your comments. All right, so we're going to finish up the content of the human sciences today and then do a case study on Thursday. And then the following Monday, we'll have the unit assessment. I've just learned what it is. We don't know if we're going to go forward with the presentation. It may be we're just going to do a practice presentation and you'll do the real presentation in the fall, or it may be later this semester we'll do a virtual presentation in place of the last area of knowledge. But at any rate, it's probably time to learn about the format. Now, your presentation it'll be moderated by the IB, but the IB will never watch your presentation. They will judge you on the basis of another one of those ridiculously named forms, in this case, the PPD form. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill out the PPD form for the human sciences as our assessment. And that will be on the following Monday. And I'm happy to give you a little more time as you get accustomed to the format. So we're not going to move forward with what we've done with the TOK essay, but save that material because we will turn it into material for your presentation. So there'll be more about that next time. We had our meeting of the other teachers, and to be honest, they were a little down that, they had a sense that many students aren't really keeping up with their work. Now, since your work is all self-guided, unless you share it with me and want me to look at it, I don't really know how you're doing. But, it's pretty simple at this point. If you keep up and, you do the worksheets and then you check them at 4 o'clock when the answers come online and you come back to me with questions, if you do that, you're going to do well. You'll know everything you need to know about the natural sciences. If you don't do well, and you don't deserve to do well. I've given you everything you need to understand the human sciences, and I'm willing to chat or respond. But you have to understand, we're in a Darwinian situation. This is survival of the fittest. The people who do the work will learn about the human sciences, and they'll be well positioned for the rest of the course. The people who don't are not going to do well. So fill out the study sheets, check them against the answers later in the day, and get back to me with questions. It's all in your hands, as it should be. End of sermon. All right, let's get on to what we're doing today. And again, we'll start with reviewing from last time. Last time we learned how laws work in the human sciences. And unlike natural science, where each law can be broken down into a simpler and more basic set of covering laws, the human sciences begin at a far more complex level, and the evidence that supports them are simply the unique actions of each individual. So they operate very differently and supported very differently than the human sciences. Thus, there's not the same empirical basis for human science laws. However, that's not to say that the laws don't produce rigorous and useful information. And your own efforts last time on the study sheet to explain a law from one of the human sciences should have confirmed the fact that it produces useful knowledge. However, no matter how rigorous and how universally applicable the law you examined last time was depended on which area of the human sciences you chose. This is our lead into today. If you chose something from economics, chances are that it was something closer to resembling a law in the natural sciences as the information was able to be quantified. If you chose something in the area of psychology, as I did, you no doubt found the rule was more general and less empirically verifiable, as it offered an explanation that focused on meaning, which is a qualitative evaluation. Misspelled. There we go. So both of these methods exist within the human sciences, and today we want to examine the qualitative and quantitative approaches. Then we want to examine the assumptions behind them. So the quantitative approach is based on the rational choice theory, so we want to look at it. The qualitative approach involves looking at the Verstehen theory. Verstehen is one of several German verbs for understanding, in this case, for an empathic understanding or trying to understand the meaning behind something. And as always, there's a list of things you should understand by the end of the lesson. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain what is meant by a quantitative approach to the sciences, and you should be able to explain and evaluate rational choice theory, the assumption upon which the qualitative rests. Also, you should be able to explain what is meant by a qualitative approach in the human sciences, and you should also be able to explain and evaluate the Verstehen approach, the assumption on which the qualitative approach rests. Now, even though these approaches are methodologically different, they share the same features and limitations as all human sciences, a topic that Kamani covered and we explained 2 lessons ago. So you should be able to explain, despite these differences, what similarities exist between the qualitative and quantitative approach, and you would get that information from one of the 3 readings for today that we'll do in class today, reconciling the rational man Verstehen theories. So there won't be another assignment on the TOK project, as we'll be switching to the presentation format on the unit assessment, but keep the material you have so far, as it will be useful. All right, let's get down to business. We're going to start with the quantitative approach. On one end of the range of subjects in the human sciences are those that use the quantitative approach, the approach whose measurement tools most closely approximate the natural sciences. Examples include economics, certain aspects of geography, as well as the biophysical aspects of psychology. The approach measures the most basic sort of human responses. That is, the ones that most closely resemble causal relationships. The quantitative approach works on the most basic things that we can quantify and measure. A good example is economics, especially behavioral economics. Let's begin our investigation by reading this outline, which is a summary of economics from your TOK text. So note, we're going to look at 2 things today. We're going to look at economics and we're going to look at psychology. We're going to do the same process in both, but it might make your work easier if you found a partner. One of you does everything described here for economics, and one of you does whatever is required on the sheet for psychology, and just make a common sheet that you can share with one another. All right, so first of all, we're going to start with the economics part. So please pause and read the economics, the first section of the handout on Google Classroom, Psychology and Economics handout. It should actually say Psychology and Economics outline. Uh-oh. Put that link back in. Now, once you've read the economics outline, the next thing we have to consider is, okay, what assumptions is this approach based on? And the answer is quantitative methods in the human sciences are by and large based on the rational choice theory. So if you're doing the economic section, now I want you to pause and read the handout on rational choice theory. All right, if you finish that, Then the next step, we're going to pause again, is for you to complete the economics section of the day 4 guided learning sheet. So we'll pause while you do that. Okay, so that is our introduction to the qualitative approach. Those human sciences where we can, although not the same way as natural science, still we can make some measurements. And again, it deals with the more basic behaviors. I would guess that, human self-interest is an example of a very basic human behavior. But on the other hand, the human sciences have probably a wider range of methods than any other AOK we're going to look at. And now we're going to look at the other end of the spectrum in the human sciences, the qualitative approach. So on the other end of the range of subjects in the human sciences are those that use the qualitative approach, the approach whose measurement tools most close. No, excuse me, that's not right. They don't. Okay, let's just say they're not at all like the natural sciences. All right. Examples of the qualitative approach. That's an approach where we're trying to figure out what something means. And it's not something that's easy to quantify, like you say. How are you going to measure happiness? That would be an example of a qualitative question. Examples in the areas of human sciences include cognitive psychology, social political geography, sociology, and anthropology. They are more looking at what do humans mean rather than being able to quantitatively measure something. The approach measures more complex human responses, that is, the ones that don't follow any causal pattern. It's an effort to understand the reasons why people act as they do. Of course, a good example of a qualitative study, and I'm sure since many of you take psychology, you're well aware of this, because I know there's a whole section on qualitative methods when you do methods in IB Psych. But a good example of psychology, especially cognitive psychology. So again, continue with psychology if you're doing this all on your own, or turn it over to your partner if you've done economics and your partner will do the psychology section. So now I want you to pause and read the outline of psychology from the psychology and economics. Again, wrong outline. It's supposed to be in caps. Again, I'll have to go back and redo this link. Now, the assumption behind the qualitative, so after you pause and read that, then the next step is just as the rational choice theory was the assumption behind quantitative, the assumption behind the qualitative approach is the Verstehen or meaning approach, where we try to put ourselves in the position of the subject in order to better understand why they act the way they do. So now, whoever's doing it, I want you to pause and read the handout on the Verstehen theory. Once you've done that, then I want you to complete the psychology section of the guided learning sheet. All right, now our final task for today is we want to reconcile, if we can, the rational man and Verstehen theories, meaning, yes, they have subtly different approaches, but in fact, they have more in common with each other than either has with the natural science or any other discipline. So we've previously noted that while the quantitative approach is closer to natural science than the qualitative approach, both share, the same weaknesses in formation, deducing consequences, and verification that Kameni pointed out earlier. So this must mean, despite their differences, there's common ground between the two approaches. That is, they share similar features, meaning there's a qualitative aspect even in the quantitative area of human sciences, and there's a quantitative aspect even in the qualitative areas of human sciences, although they exist in different ratios to each other. This commonality is discussed in the third article today, reconciling rational man and Verstehen theory. So I'd like you, we're almost done, I'd like you to please pause and read that rational man and Verstehen theory. Once you've done that, please complete the final section of the guided learning sheet. You're going to offer a brief summary of what the two approaches have in common. If you're working with a partner, this is the part where maybe you two can work together to come up with a shared summary. Okay, we have now examined this. I'm talking now in the whole unit. We've examined the scope of the human sciences, the methods used in the human sciences, the nature of laws in the human sciences, and today the two different approaches used with the natural sciences, the quantitative approach, and I should put in here rational choice theory, and the qualitative Verstehen theory. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to apply all these to a real life situation next class with a case study. Again, today I think was a little longer with 3 readings, so there's no work on the TOK essay, as we're going to be shifting it towards the presentation. More on that next time. Now, don't forget to check your understanding of the key ideas here, and then, of course, with the my answers that will come online at 4 o'clock of the day that you look, the screencast comes online. So remember, you should be able to explain what's meant by a quantitative approach in the sciences. You should be able to explain and evaluate the rational choice theory, the assumption of which this is wrong, the quantitative, I'm really going to confuse you, the quantitative approach rests. You should be able to explain what is meant by a qualitative approach in the sciences. You should also be able to explain and evaluate the Verstehen approach, the assumption upon which the qualitative approach rests. And then, even though these approaches are different, you should be able, after looking at reconciling the rational man and Verstehen theories on your guided learning sheet, put down how they're similar. All right. Okay, well, that's it for today. I will have another screencast up for you on Thursday when we will do our case study. Until then, study and be safe.